I always thought cemeteries and the afterlife were peaceful. Maybe it's 'cause we see so much of that portrayed on TV. But stepping into a truly haunted cemetery with a morbid past, I've learned it's far different, more overwhelming and profound. There's a heaviness that takes over your body. It's really hard to explain in words. But you understand it the moment you step into one. I struggle with anxiety, which I once thought kept me from truly experiencing places like these. But I've come to see it differently. My sensitivity might actually draw me closer to the quiet whispers of these sacred spaces. Tonight, I'll share 3 creepy true cemetery and afterlife tales with you. I hope to reveal the real emotions, far beyond the scripted scenes you're used to. Let's begin. Story 1, Bachelor's Grove, Cemetery Terror. On my birthday, my 2 best friends and I had planned on a pretty awesome night. I ultimately found myself wandering through the otherworldly silence of Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, a notorious haunt draped in the whispers of the past, nestled in the quiet outskirts of Chicago. The day had started bizarrely enough. I was cruising around Wicker Park with one of my best friends, Annie. We had a shared affinity for the paranormal, an unusual cornerstone that made the day's unfolding events seem almost preordained. Annie kept driving in seemingly random loops, refusing to reveal our destination. After what felt like an eternity of teasing turns, she abruptly stopped. "Get out and look behind you," she exclaimed. As I stepped out, Ivan dropped a massive banner across the street, heralding "Happy Birthday" in bold letters, capturing the width of the road. The residents of surrounding buildings erupted into song. It was surreal, the kind of moment you'd expect to find in a feel-good movie, not in the prologue to a day that would darken as deeply as this one did. Post-celebrations, we headed towards our real destination, Bachelor's Grove Cemetery, a mere 30-minute drive from the jovial streets of my neighborhood, was an infamous site steeped in ghostly lore, declared one of the most haunted graveyards in America. We arrived laden with champagne and snacks, anticipating a thrilling encounter with the supernatural. Little did we know the experience would transcend mere ghostly apparitions. As we trekked the narrow, wooded path leading to the cemetery, an inexplicable heaviness cloaked us. It was a physical oppression, a dark weight that pressed against our chests, thick as the fog that sometimes hangs over early morning graveyards. The moment we passed through the rusted gates of Bachelor's Grove, a profound sadness enveloped us. It wasn't the spooky thrill we craved, but an invasive melancholy that seeped into our bones. This sorrow wasn't ours. It felt planted, as though something ancient wanted us to share in its eternal grief. The daylight waned, and with it, our spirits dimmed further. We managed to set up our picnic, but found ourselves too unsettled to enjoy it. Both Annie and Ivan reported eerie occurrences simultaneously. A girl speaking loudly, slicing through the still air, shadows flitting just beyond the corner of the eye. We lingered for hours, each minute stretching taut, as the eerie sensation of being watched grew increasingly unbearable. Finally, we fled to a nearby bar, seeking solace in the clamor of the living. Yet, the desolation from the cemetery clung to us like a shroud. It seemed an apparition had followed us from the graves, its presence a cold patch at our table. The next day, Annie sent over photos from our expedition, each one speckled with inexplicable orbs of light. I uploaded them onto my laptop, intending to preserve these eerie mementos. However, a week later, they vanished from my hard drive, and Annie's camera as if erased by an unseen hand. Since then, my life has felt subtly off-kilter. My laptop crashes randomly, especially when I attempt to discuss or revisit our cemetery experience. My television flicks on in the dead of night to static-filled screens, and more than once, I've awoken to find my front door inexplicably ajar. Whatever we encountered at Bachelor's Grove, it didn't stay buried in that forsaken plot of land. It followed me home, a persistent reminder that some places are haunted for a reason, and some birthdays are best celebrated in the bright, bustling noise of the living, far from the quiet shadows of the dead. Story 2: A Crematorium Horror. Ever since my breakup, I felt like a shadow drifting aimlessly through this world, my loneliness a silent companion. Sometimes, the only thing that seems to shock me back to life is delving into the unknown, the eerie quiet of haunted places where the past lingers like a heavy fog. I've always been sensitive to the paranormal. I've seen orbs floating in the still air of cemeteries, felt the oppressive weight of unseen presences. I know the reality of these things, how they can claw at the edges of your soul. It was during such a forlorn period that I found myself involved in one of the most harrowing experiences of my life, working at our local crematorium. This incident in 2012 left an indelible mark on me. It was after the service for a particularly large man, around 375 pounds, and the day had already settled into an uneasy calm. The cremation chamber, or retort, had been preheated, ready for the solemn task ahead. Meanwhile, my best friend tried to lighten the mood, setting up a movie to distract us from the grim realities of our job. I used the elevating platform to position the man inside the retort, securing the heavy door behind him with a final resonant thud. We had barely settled in when a soft thump echoed from the direction of the retort, a sound easily dismissed as a settling echo. But then it came again, more insistent this time, followed quickly by another. Anxiety pricked at my spine as I stood up, fearing a gruesome possibility, a forgotten pacemaker igniting. But the reality was far more terrifying. As the thumps grew into a frenzied rhythm, we approached the retort's window, the small porthole offering a view into the fiery chamber. What we saw defied all logic and understanding. The man inside was convulsing violently, his limbs flailing with such force that it seemed he was fighting an invisible assailant. His fingers were curled into tight fists, hammering against the glass, while his legs kicked as if trying to escape the searing heat. Then, a groan spilled from the chamber, escalating into chilling screams that pierced the heavy air. There was absolutely no way he could still be alive. His organs had been removed, his body prepared according to every regulation. Yet, for about 20 agonizing seconds, the man inside the cremation chamber appeared to be engulfed in a horrific struggle against death itself. My friend and I stood frozen, our eyes locked on the ghastly display. The screaming ceased as abruptly as it had begun, leaving behind a silence that was somehow louder than the previous chaos. The retort settled back into its mechanical hum, the only sound cutting through the thick, oppressive air. This experience haunted me, lingering like a phantom in my mind. Sometimes, I wonder if my emotional vulnerability had opened a door, allowing something else, some entity or spirit, to brush against my existence. These days, I wander a bit more cautiously through life, particularly around the echoes of the departed. My nights are often restless, disturbed by the memory of that day, the screams echoing in my dreams, a stark reminder of the thin veil between life and the hereafter. Story 3: A Midnight Patrol. Ever since my best friend's mom passed away, the atmosphere in our shared house has thickened with a palpable sense of dread. His grief is tainted with terror, nightmares of her wandering the halls, her presence as palpable in death as it was in life. They had a strained, tumultuous relationship, and now, even in death, she seems to haunt him relentlessly. "Why is she tormenting me?" he'd whisper during our long, dark conversations in the dim glow of the kitchen light. Lately, I've been sleeping downstairs on the couch to keep him company, partly out of solidarity, partly to escape the crushing loneliness of my own room upstairs, surrounded by remnants of a relationship that had recently dissolved. The artwork and paintings my ex left behind seem to gaze at me with a melancholy that's too heavy to bear alone at night. In this gloomy backdrop, I've taken to walking my dog late in the evenings, seeking solace in the stillness. But even my loyal companion seems uneasy, growling at shadows that dance just beyond the reach of the streetlights. My friend believes his mother's spirit might be lurking around, a thought that chills me to the bone. Amidst this turbulent period, I remembered a job I had taken up at 21, a nighttime security gig at a sprawling local cemetery. They had hired me during a time when people were sneaking in to perform unknown rituals, leaving behind an eerie energy that even the daylight couldn't dispel. Armed with nothing but a barcode scanner, I was tasked to patrol the grounds, driving through every hour to scan barcodes posted across the cemetery to ensure I covered the entire area. The cemetery was divided into 3 parts: the newer section, the historic grounds, and the famous section where celebrities were laid to rest. The sheer size of it was overwhelming, and that first night, under a moonless sky, I felt every shadow conceal 1,000 watching eyes. I completed my initial round without incident, but as I started the second, the air grew inexplicably colder. My headlights cut through the darkness, a lone beacon in the enveloping night. As I rounded a long curve in the road, my lights caught something unimaginable, a pair of legs walking across the path. Just legs. Shoes, pants, knees, and then nothing above. They moved with eerie purpose, crossing just 10 feet in front of my car. Frozen in shock, I could only stare as they passed from one side of the light to the other and disappeared into the night. The scanner fell from my hands, forgotten. Panic gripped me, and I threw the car into reverse, executing what felt like the longest, most desperate K-turn of my life. I couldn't get out of there fast enough, speeding back to the safety of the parking lot, where I broke the scanner in a fit of anxiety. I couldn't bear the thought of going back out there, of confirming that what I saw was real. That job was supposed to be a simple side gig, a way to earn some extra money. But that night, I had ventured into something far beyond the normal, something that whispered of unquiet souls and unfinished business. Even now, years later, the memory of those disembodied legs crossing the road haunts me, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between our world and the next. As I lay here on the couch, my dog's low growl breaking the silence, I can't help but wonder if the cemetery's spirits followed me home, intertwining with the restless ghost of my friend's mother to create a nexus of haunting that now envelops our house. The thought sends a shiver down my spine. the darkness around us feeling heavier with every passing moment, as if waiting for something or someone to breach it.